What's up, everybody? Wanted to come back, start videos again about aircraft systems on the 7.6. I know it's been a little bit since I've posted a video. You know how it is, life gets in the way and, well, work and that kind of stuff. But I figured we'd pick up where we left off. The last little bit that we went over some hydraulics, some electrics, some fuels. And if you are interested in seeing any of those videos, go ahead and click the link here above my head, and you can go in and look at any of those that are in the playlist. Today, figure we'll go through some pneumatics. It's not a real big system. It's not a real long system. Hopefully I can make this quick and dirty for you, and we can kind of get through it. So again, if you don't remember who I am, my name is Brandon. I'm a ground school instructor for a couple different cargo airlines that all fly the 7.6, whether it be the 200 or the 300, and I have experience in instructing on the 757 as well. So, looking at this, we're jumping straight into a 767-300. Okay, we're on the pneumatic side, which if you want to look where this is located here, it's going to be on the overhead panel on the right hand side all the way at the bottom, and that's where we're going to start with our air systems. We're going to start from where the air comes from, then we'll go into the air conditioning system in another video, and then we'll talk about the pressurization system and even the equipment cooling system, which no one seems to like, but we'll talk about it as well. Okay, so just a quick overview. Looking here at the pneumatic system, we have engine bleeds that come off of the engines, right? That's simple, because our engines produce a crap ton of bleed air. So we've got air coming off of those. We have the APU that can also be used that can supply bleed air. Now notice switches are on and it says that it's off. My engines aren't on right now. I'm sitting without the engines running. The APU, you'll see there's a valve light that comes on and extinguishes. That's the in-transit valve light, right? Saying that it's in transit. And again, going from closed to open or open to closed. Right engine, same thing. If we look up here, I've got isolation valves. Again, because they are valves, lights come on and go out to tell me there's a temporary disagreement between the switch location and what the actual location of the valve is. However, once the valve gets into the correct position, valve lights go away. So if you remember, I think I said this in a couple other videos, valve lights do two things. It's a disagreement light. It's telling you the switch is in one position, the valve's in the other. Or it's an in-transit light, meaning that the valve is in transit from what you've commanded it to do. Now, notice the center isolation has a guard on top of it, right? There's a reason for that. The center isolation is not supposed to be closed ever unless you're directed by a QRH. This is for a couple different reasons. One is so the APU is able to provide air up into the system if need be. And two is this little thing right here, the ADP. So, haven't really talked about this. I think it's in the hydraulic video a little bit. ADP is air-driven pump, air-demand pump, air-driven demand pump. I don't care how you remember it. Any of those three will work. But the big thing here is air needs to get to it, because it's the helper for the center hydraulic system. It's what helps with the flaps and slats and gear. Okay? So air can come up from the right engine into here, down into the center manifold. Then it can go out to the ADP. Air from the left engine can do the same thing. It can come up, come into the center, and then come down. Okay, now one thing that's missing, this panel obviously is off of a simulator. It's not exactly what's in the aircraft. So what's in the aircraft is you'll actually see these little arrow shapes right here, and those are actually check valves, meaning that the air can come through them, they just can't go back. So that is one thing that's slightly different with this, but we can work through it. Now notice I got a crap ton of other lights here, right? I've got 3 lights on this side, 3 lights here, 3 lights, and 1 light here, and I'm going to show you what those actually look like here. So we'll turn our test on and we'll see. So duct leak, That sounds like it'd be pretty self-explanatory, right? And then bleed light, and then overheat lights. Overheat lights are self-explanatory in my opinion. Overheat means it's an overheat. However, on this airplane, I'll show you, it's an overheat of a specific thing. It's a temperature thing. Bleed is an overpressure thing. If you come from 7.5s into the 7.6, this is temperature and this is pressure. It's weird. They're the same airplane type rating, but it's a little bit different as far as how they made their switches and how they made their lights kind of act, which is just weird to me. But anyway, so duct leak. Okay, so we'll talk about the duct leak real quick. It's a leak in the duct. Simple enough? No? Okay. So the way the duct leak is sensed, or that it's indicated, or that it knows that there's a duct leak, is based off of these little temperature sensors. It's kind of like an engine overheat loop or an engine fire loop, that real thin wire. It runs along the ducts. So what happens is if the duct is leaking, then obviously there's an addition of heat into the area where this little thin wire is. And that is what dictates the fact that you have a duct leak. Now, depending on where this leak is sensed will depend on where these lights illuminate. Obviously, if it's on the right side, so it'd be up this way, up to the check valve, right here, that would be here on this side. On the left side, it's the same thing. It comes up through here into the check valve. Then that would be a duct leak over here. And then anything through here, in between these two, is going to be a duct leak right here. Now, there is a slight caveat, and it's something you can't really see on here, and I'm hopefully got another graphic that I can show you that will have a little bit better of an explanation to it. So the duct leak sensors go up and into what we call a crossover manifold, which is this section here in between our left and right isolations and before the center isolation. So this is all what's called the crossover manifold. In the aircraft, it actually crosses over from the right to the left side or left to right side, however you're looking at it. Now, with that being said, the temperature sensors for the duct leak actually go into this section for the left and for the right. So the right comes to about here, left comes to about here. Now, obviously, this is not to scale of what's on the airplane. It's just saying there is a section. It's not really monitored, but this part and this part are both monitored by the left and right side respectively. Why that's important: if I have bleed air running through the system and I get a duct leak on this side, I'm going to take out my QRH. I'm going to run the QRH items. More than likely, what it's going to tell me to do is it's going to tell me to turn this off, turn my packs off, and see if the light extinguishes. Obviously, it did here because the test was over and I didn't keep it on pause. But if this light is illuminated right here, that tells me that I have an overheat. So I have to get rid of that air. So I do that by eliminating it here and turn off the pack to try and get this light to extinguish. Now, if it's only on this side, it'll extinguish because there's no more air to give that temperature, right? But if it is here in the crossover, closing this won't matter. Turning off my packs won't matter. This light will stay illuminated, and that's because this duct would be getting fed from the left side. In that case, there's a couple extra steps in the QRH. Every company has a different way of doing their stuff. I'm not going to tell you which way is correct. I'm not even going to tell you the way that I teach, because I don't want you to get confused by what my company does versus what your company would do. The main thing is to follow the QRH procedure, okay, in that particular case. Now, let's turn these lights back on again, and we'll talk a little bit more about the rest of this. So, bleed light. Bleed light is a pressure, That's an overpressure light. That's what that tells me. I'm going to show a schematic here in just a minute after we get done talking about these two lights. That's going to show you where that bleed light is going to get its information to turn on. This is going to happen when one of two things occur. So inside the engine, there's two different things. We have what's called an HPSOV, or a high pressure shutoff valve. That's back on one of the stages for the bleed air. I think it's the 9th stage. Don't quote me. I think it's the 9th stage. And then the other one is for a PRV, or a pressure regulating valve. Okay. Now, is it important for a pilot to really know where these are located in the engine? No. All you need to know is that when it comes up on ICAS, the ICAS will tell you, and if you don't remember, ICAS is Engine Indicating Crew Alerting System. That's what that stands for. That's the two screens in the middle of the front panel. So the ICAS will tell you which one it is. It'll give you left engine PRV, or right engine PRV, or left engine HPSOV. It'll give you the actual message for which one is open. That will drive your QRH, and that will drive which checklist you're going to go to. But yeah, the bleed light, that's an overpressure thing. What it's saying is that the high pressure shutoff or the pressure regulating valve are open when they should be closed. Therefore, the bleed duct itself is getting more pressure in it than it should. So that's what that light's there for. Now, overheat, it's an overheat in the duct, right? So inside the engine, there are intercoolers that the air comes through before it gets entered into the pneumatic system, because obviously the air coming off the engine is ridiculously hot, 700-800 degrees C. So it goes through intercoolers before it comes into the pneumatic system. If it goes through that intercooler and then the temperature is still above a certain threshold, I don't know what the threshold is. That's written in a maintenance manual somewhere. I don't teach the maintenance manuals. So if you want to go look it up and you have access to maintenance manuals, good on you. But all we need to really know is that it's above a certain threshold, right? Turns that overheat light on. It's going to drive us to another QRH item. It's going to have us turn off some switches, and it's going to make sure that we try and eliminate that light. Okay, so now that we've gone over that, let's look at the schematic of how the air actually moves through this system. Okay, so I've brought this schematic up. This schematic shows airflow from the right engine, left engine, and also the center pneumatic stuff indicated in blue. So on the pneumatic panel that's inside the aircraft, obviously it doesn't have all the stuff on it that the pneumatic system does, because that would just clutter it up and make it hard to read. But from what you can see, let's see here. So we've got our left engine, right engine, and air comes out of it, goes through our bleed valve, and then goes into the system. And when it goes into the system, it does things like hydraulic reservoir pressure for the left, center, and right systems. And that's to keep head pressure on the reservoirs to make sure that we don't get foaming in the hydraulic system. I don't think I have to explain to you why that would be a bad thing. Just think about it like blood in your system. You don't want air bubbles in it. Same reason for an aircraft. We don't want bubbles in a hydraulic system either. Now, if you also look, we have cargo heat that's associated with this too. We've got forward cargo heat that's up here. We've got aft and bulk. All of this is on the center and from the crossover. So that is air from the left and right engines that go in there. Here's the little check valves that we were talking about earlier. These little arrows here. So there's check valves here, and there's check valves down here after the low out of the low pressure side. And then when we were talking about those lights, we have our duct leak, which this one doesn't show the duct leak sensors on it. But it would be a leak, obviously, in these ducts that would cause those lights to come on. The bleed light being an overpressure light, we talked about, the HPSOV, the PRV. So those are located here. Now, granted, this is not what it looks like on the aircraft, but prior to it entering into the system, it goes through the HPSOV, which is the high pressure shutoff valve, and it goes through a PRV, or a pressure regulating valve. Now what happens is, if these are open when they should be closed, that means this duct is going to have too much pressure in it. When that pressure gets above a certain threshold, the bleed light comes on. Now, the bleed light comes on for both of them, HPSOV or PRV. The way the pilots or the crew members know which one it is by the ICAS message. It'll say HPSOV or it'll say PRV. And that's going to drive you to your QRH checklist. The overheat. So this doesn't have a good picture of it here either, but imagine that there's a little intercooler in the line here. So that intercooler has the air pass through it, and then after it goes through the intercooler, it goes through a temperature sensor. When it goes through that temperature sensor, if it is above a certain threshold, the overheat light kicks on. Then you get an ICAS message telling you that there's an overheat. Then it'll drive you to your QRH for an overheat light in the pneumatics. Now, notice it also does things like wing anti-ice. It does cowl anti-ice. Here's our start valves. I've got another video here where I talk about start select switches and what the aircraft does, and SAIL. If you remember anything from that video, the acronym SAIL. So that's start valve open. Here you go. That's that one. So that's start valve open, APU opens, and then igniter's arm and all that stuff, load shed for electrics. All that's for starting the engines, right? So it's not really applicable here other than the start valve. So here's your start valve of it opening. Now, I didn't talk about the isolation valves. The isolation valve here, here, and here. Okay? I did mention that the center stays open all the time. That's why it's guarded. And that's because we need to protect the ADP, and we need to make sure that it has air, and we have to have the availability of the APU giving air if needed. Okay? The other two isolations are left and right isolation. So this one here and this one here. Both of those are only open for engine start and pack operation on the ground. Outside of that, they're closed unless directed by a QRH. So for normal situations, after engine start, those get closed. And then they don't open again unless something goes wrong and they need to open via a QRH. Okay? Now, if we think about this, where, I've got a check valve right here. So I have to have it open during engine start because the air from the APU has to be able to come up, wrap around, and then go down to my start valve. So that makes sense. And it's really, they're there to isolate the left and right sides from each other to prevent any kind of contamination or smoke or whatever from going from one side to the other. Okay, and then the air goes up into the packs. Now, one thing I didn't talk about is this pressure thing here, the pressure gauge, the duct pressure gauge is written in PSI, and there are two needles, which you can see here in the picture. One is for the left side, one's for the right side. 99% of the time, there is no minimum duct pressure required to start an engine. Okay. I've worked for 3 companies now. None of the 3 companies had a minimum duct pressure to start the engines under normal conditions. When you get into cross bleed starts, when you get into ground cart starts, those require a certain PSI. Usually it's 30 PSI. Again, follow what's in your limitations section. Follow what's in your supplemental normal engine starting procedures for either a cross bleed or a ground cart start. Don't take my word as gospel. I am just telling you what I've seen, what I've experienced, and what I would generally expect to see in a manual if I would go to a different company. Now, with that being said, that's really all there is when it comes to the pneumatic system. It's not a hard system. There's not a lot to it, really, as far as a pilot is concerned. There's not a lot for a pilot to be able to do to this system. Maintenance guys, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I know there's probably a crap ton of stuff that goes wrong in this system or could go wrong in this system, or it's a lot of work in it. And I'm sorry, I don't know any of that stuff. I don't teach any of that. I teach pilots. So as far as pilots are concerned, there's not a lot to it. Light comes on, sweet, run a QRH, and then you move on. The only thing I will say is that it leads into more complicated systems, right? It leads into the air conditioning system. It leads into pressurization. And then the equipment cooling, which nobody likes to talk about, but I'll make a video of us talking about it, and you can be bored throughout the whole thing. Honestly, if you've made it this far, please like, subscribe. I'm up to 87 subscribers now. Woo! If I hit 100, I think I'm going to give something away, just because. I don't know. We'll see if that actually happens and if I can actually make that work. But share it. Anybody who needs it, somewhere out there, if you've been around me, been in my classes, anything like that, I'm sure you have gotten a training video that I did for the first airline I worked for. I am not allowed to put that out, but if you happen to look up 767 oral prep, somebody somewhere has that video and they've posted it online. So if you want to go look at it, you absolutely can. But that's kind of what I'm wanting to do with this, is I'm wanting to go through all of the systems. Then I want to do an oral review video where I can help people that may have questions with orals that they go through or that they're about to go through or something like that. I don't know. I just really like the airplane. I like teaching the airplane. I answer all the comments to the best I can if there's questions in the comments. If it's not, then I give you a thumbs up or I say thanks or something like that. But I look through all the comments. You can email me. There's two places you can email me. gsiguybrandon@gmail.com. That's one. That'll be in the description of the video. The other one is training@gsiguybrandon.com. I look at all the emails there as well. I'm coming up with a website that's going to hopefully have some pretty cool stuff on it, so we'll see how that goes. Other than that, guys, check the description for any other information. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.